May 30th, 1806. Future President Andrew Jackson kills Charles Dickinson in a duel. You may want to take away from this that Jackson was a violent monster, but you should also take away from this that the duel was over a horse named Plowboy.
Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
And joining us once again, Denver treasure, Denver comedy champion, Nathan Lund, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Zach, thank you for being here from Chicago.
Yeah, of course. I didn't initially live in Chicago, but in this time of quarantine precautions, I thought it prudent to get as far away from specifically Brian as possible. I know there's more people here than in Denver, but I thought Brian has got to be, if I know one person who
is seemingly constantly ill. Yeah, that's...
Or who I just want to use any excuse to be far away from.
Listeners,
speaking of space, we are talking about the space race on this section of The Revisionists. I think this is our final episode about ye old space race.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
The old space race, spelled with an E on the end of every word, and another E.
Would you say that this is the final chapter because it's been definitively proven that space won the space race? Space won. We did not.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like we had space on the ropes for a little bit, but
yeah, we put a couple points on the board in the late 60s, but space came back with a vengeance, baby.
Yeah, we looked good and then got cocky, and it was like, oh yeah, space decided to just dominate and squash it pretty quick.
Space is just the Undertaker at this point.
I mean, we did a good job with, obviously, Apollo 11 was a big win for us. We managed a victory during the Space Jam of the mid-90s, but besides that, we just haven't been pulling it off. This podcast, for those of you who are unfamiliar, is a comedy history podcast where we talk about a person or event from history. One person gives the true government-sanctioned story of that person or event, and the other person gives a crazy bullshit bananas Batman, Bilbo Baggins version. And at the end, we vote on what becomes the true history of this beautiful, bright, blue, buoyant marble that we call the Earth going forward. Before we cover old news and previous victors, we're actually gonna do a little out of order and do some plugs up front for special causes this week.
Yeah, we are recording this actually the day before it's released, May 29th. Obviously, with the protests over the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor by police, we wanted to eschew our normal plugs for our bullshit and ask people if they have extra money to kick it over to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which is running a bail fund for protesters, specifically in Minneapolis. And excuse me, sorry, I wrote down the actual name, the Louisville Community Bail Fund, which is where Breonna Taylor was killed. And I will put links to those in the show notes. So yeah, please, if you can, please throw some money that way. It's a small way to help from afar. And yeah, it's hard to find ways to feel better about that right now, but it's an important thing to do.
Yeah. Additionally, did we properly introduce our guest for this week at any point?
I did. I said he was a Denver treasure.
Okay, great. Okay. I spaced it for a second. I was like, I just want to make sure we covered our bases prior to getting this deep into the show and making him just wait while we talked about very serious subject matter. But
I thought maybe you would, if you have any causes you were going to mention, I was going to let you go ahead, and then I was going to maybe add one or two.
Well, we've also obviously been plugging away at things like giving blood or giving funds for, say, people who have been put out of work or cannot go to work or have been unable to recently because of the COVID quarantine. It's a shitty time, y'all, but there's a lot to donate to. There's a lot of people that need help right now. People are sick, people are getting killed by the police, and people are out of work. Give blood, donate to corona relief efforts, whatever you can.
Yeah, and I would just add that there's also a similar defense type fund for the Denver protesters that have been arrested or injured so far. There's I think just a handful, but I'm sure that both of those things are going to continue to happen. So if you want to do a local thing and you're in Denver, you could consider that. But also, I know that there's a GoFundMe for the family of George Floyd, and it is being shared and is getting a lot of attention. But I think anybody that wants to donate to them, to his family, is not a bad idea either.
And let's toss one more on there. It's getting to be kind of this time of year where we start saying, if you aren't registered to vote, go ahead and do that. Even if you're not thrilled with the top choices, for the presidential race, local elections are supremely important and can make a lot of difference in stuff like how police brutality is handled on a local level. So it's always worth it to register and to vote. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that being said, we could move on to a comedy podcast about butts and
business.
Let's see, space tragedies. Cool.
In less pressing matters, the Apollo 11 episode, which released 4 weeks ago, we have the results for that. And the alternate history, provided by Bridget Callahan, emerged the victor. So we also have the results for the Apollo 13 episode, released 2 weeks ago. 2 episodes that were not bummers, back to back. And in the Apollo 13 episode, the real history won out. But bummers must occur in this life. So
that's right, listeners. We gave you 2 episodes right in a row where no one died.
0 fatalities for 2 episodes. Perhaps a revisionist record.
And now,
actually, I think we were on 3 at that point, right? Yeah, I think at least 3. So we were riding strong.
Because if Sputnik came before that, there was at least Laika. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, fair enough. So, perhaps the saddest death of them all. That's a real bummer.
Yeah.
That makes me think of the meme where it would be space saying, they had us there in the first half. we came out hot.
There's a meme of space, and it's Adam Sandler saying, "This is how I win" from Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Zach, you did mention that this is the last episode of the space race, and after this, we're going to start our mini series on medical history, which is probably also going to be bummers and syphilis. So that's our slogan for the next few weeks. But
it's going to be plagues. It's going to be typhoid Marys, but we'll throw a Jonas Salk in there to spice things up, make things a little happier, at least for a minute.
Yeah. Did we say what week
we are talking about? Soyuz, I guess, is Russian. We, as always, our standard disclaimer: we don't know how to pronounce any of this shit. But
I think Soyuz. That's what I've been.
Soyuz. Okay, Soyuz 11, which means Union 11 in Russian. I won't say any more because I don't want to spoil this juicy tale. But Brian, I believe, has the actual history.
Yes, indeed. So, and listeners, I will say also, I mentioned we're recording this the night before it's released, which means I'm also not really going to be editing this one that much. So you get the raw, unfiltered use of my verbal fillers. So let's do this shit.
Revisionist, half-cocked.
Oh God, that's the worst. Like Cinemax After Dark. Like
it was in the vein of After Dark, but naughtier.
Naughtier, but more disappointing.
Right? Yeah.
It's David Duchovny's The Red Slipper Diaries.
Everybody goes crazy for our procrastination editions of the Revisionists. Did you think we put in low effort before? Wait till you get a procrastination edition.
I like that we would have recorded yesterday, but when I said to you guys I wanted to go to that protest, you guys were like, wait, what protest? And it was like, don't worry, the good one.
Not There's two things people are protesting right now.
Yeah.
One is good and the other is dumb and bad.
You're like, wait a minute, is he about to go down and demand a haircut from the governor?
We are already
half-cocked.
This podcast is on the knife's edge of being canceled, and we just can't deal with that kind of controversy right now.
Anyway.
I don't understand.
So up top, I want to say my sources for this are NASA, the UK National Space Center, Real Clear Science, and Blessed Wikipedia. And we've been going back and forth between the U.S. at point of view on the space race and some of the USSR accomplishments. And so after doing Apollo 13 and Apollo 11 right in a row, we wanted to wrap up with something from the USSR.
Not one of their successes, though.
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag. So after
very jingoistic podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's me. We know my tone.
The message of this segment has been like, back in the late 60s, early 70s, America was great. We had a space force, and we just need to go back to those times.
You know what? Everyone was wearing loose-fitting, comfortable clothes, and everything was okay. No. Jesus Christ.
And scarves.
Exactly. Cravats. Dickies.
People looked like fucking Don Draper, and now look at them. These hipsters with their tight pants.
Why is
facial hair?
Why is this the one I'm not editing? Anyway.
Cloves, cigarettes.
Jesus.
Smoke a Lucky Strike, you fucking asshole.
Anyway, after the moon landing, the USSR sort of refocused to they're making their main priority building an orbital space station. They were still planning on maybe doing a moon landing if their N1 rocket worked, and it did not. But that led to the creation of the Salyut program, which was their space stations. Salyut 1 was the first one, OBS. It aimed to answer sort of like very basic questions regarding the long-term effects of weightlessness. Some people at the time thought astronauts' hearts would get, quote, lazy and quit pumping blood if they were exposed to no gravity environments for an extended period of time. Salyut 1 was launched in 1971 to mark 10 years from Yuri Gagarin's flight, who we talked about, Short King, Yuri Gagarin. Short King. And so the Soyuz spacecraft was designed to dock with the Salyut and deliver astronauts and equipment to it. It was sort of similar to the Saturn V, except not as powerful because it didn't need to be. Soyuz 10 was supposed to deliver the first cosmonauts to the space station, but it failed to dock properly, and they had to abort the mission. So on June 6th, 1971, Soyuz 11 launched from we'll roll the dice here, Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
One thing that we have not mentioned about the space race that I love, about how much of a petty bitch both America and Russia were, is that they were like, we got to have different names for it. Cosmonaut and astronaut. It's the same shit, but we can't call it the same thing. They refused.
Astro or Cosmo, you got to have the knot in there, though, baby. Sure. The knot is what makes it. So on board were Commander Georgy Dobrovolsky, age 43, flight engineer Vladislav Volkov, age 35, and test engineer Viktor Patsayev, age 38. So launched June 6th, and then June 7th, Soyuz 11 successfully docked with Salyut 1. And when they first entered the space station, they found the air inside was smoky and burnt. Don't know what happened exactly. I have a theory. We'll get to that later. So the first thing they did was installed a new ventilation system. And the crew of Soyuz 11 then proceeded to set what was then the record for the longest stay in space at 22 days, which was that record was later broken, obviously, but at the time that was, I think, more than double the longest.
Sort of broken.
Yeah. Like I said, all verbal fillers, baby. So, and during
they still get the record for most time in space. They just don't get the record for most time surviving going to space.
Most time in space.
Spoiler alert.
If most time in space is the end of the sentence, they got it. If you add another word that rhymes with belive, maybe not so
much. That 22 days the mission was a success in that window. Part of what the cosmonauts did was they made frequent live television broadcasts that captivated people back in the USSR. Patsayev became the first person to operate a telescope in space. Their ultraviolet telescope produced spectrograms of stars that were later published in the journal Nature. They also tested things like the effect of exercise in space. They installed a treadmill in the space station, but they had to stop using it because running on the treadmill made the whole space station vibrate. Which it does that in my apartment building gym. So I identify with that.
I guess theoretically, the space exercise is pretty negligible in terms of usefulness, though, right? I guess maybe cardio
Yeah,
be useful.
I think it was mainly that and like studying the effect of exertion in space because like
But even cardio has to be a lot easier when you're weightless.
essentially. Look, I don't know enough about exercise to answer this question. I just do what the machine tells me to. So on day 11, an electrical fire broke out on the space station. And that briefly caused the Soviet authorities, they did not at the time have like a NASA, like a centralized space agency. It caused them to consider terminating the mission early. But they stayed put for another 11 days. That goes back to my theory as to why the air when they got to the space station was full of smoke, because definitely prone to electrical fires. Their stay was eventually cut short. And on June 29th, they undocked, orbited the Earth 3 times, and finally sent a transmission back to Mission Control that they were preparing for re-entry. They had to conduct a 7-minute burn to get on the proper re-entry trajectory, and controllers on the ground lost radio contact with Soyuz 11 not long after they conducted the burn. Despite the loss of radio contact, radar and sensors showed a successful landing. The parachutes deployed, all the stuff you want in a space landing. And the recovery crew got to the spacecraft, which landed in Kazakhstan. And they knocked on the side, and there was no response. So they opened the hatch to find all 3 cosmonauts, Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev, strapped into their seats, all 3 dead, with large blue patches on their skin and blood flowing from their noses and ears.
I misspoke earlier. I thought that they died in space and never got back to Earth. So maybe their record did get broken. Sorry, guys, you didn't even get that.
Well, and how long were they? Do you know how long they were supposed to stay up there?
Not offhand. I could not track that down.
Okay.
It seems like not too much longer than they already did. Especially because people were already reticent about them being on the space station for that amount of time anyway.
Yeah. So if it was double the record, maybe they thought that they could do a month.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking, but I have nothing to base that on.
Right.
The 3 astronauts are, to this day, the only people known to have died in space. I say known because that's what the articles said, and I feel like we would know, generally.
If some dipshit 100 years before the space race was able to get up there and then,
just like, oh no. Yeah, if fucking Ernest got into space 100 years ago. Yeah.
That is a weird. Truly, it's strange that the last Ernest movie was him dying in space. Ernest dies in space was a weird capper to that. He's just in a capsule running out of oxygen singing, "Gee, I'm glad it's raining," and wasting away.
I didn't know that. That's funny. I haven't seen that one.
It's a hidden gem.
Yeah, I only like the first couple in the series because those are the ones I know.
Near the end, Varney was like, "Can we get Oscar attention, maybe?" And so he tried to go with a new angle.
It was Moon before David Bowie's son made Moon.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but he's David Bowie's son.
Oh,
something Smith,
yeah.
I think.
I think it's something.
Or Jones. It's Jones.
Yes, it's something. Martin Jones, maybe something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if I could pull it out. But
he also directed the
Yeah.
Warcraft movie.
Dude,
oh damn.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, David Bowie's son directed the Warcraft movie.
Wow.
It's Duncan
Know that
Jones.
either.
Duncan Jones.
Yeah,
Duncan.
America runs on Duncan. So what? Anyway,
Runs into the theater. To please.
I want a theater to myself. Oh god. Which is also like there's the fine distinction of died in space versus died on a space mission, where with things like Challenger and Columbia, because those were just like in atmosphere enough that they did not die in space. Anyway,
Do they know
Yeah.
what? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say. Oh, I was just gonna say. Got it. Yeah. If you're an astronaut or a cosmonaut, and you have the option between 22 days of like mostly wins, like, and then
yeah,
versus the Challenger, which is just the Challenger was so heartbreaking because they did all of the work of going to space and then didn't get any of the payoff. That was so terrible.
Here's the flip side, though. With the Challenger, it blew up, and that was it. These guys, they came back with blue patches on their body and blood coming out of their nose and ears and eyes.
Yeah.
yeah. We'll
There could have been an Event Horizon situation that happened up there.
Yeah, it sounds deeply unpleasant. I don't think Brian has said
They opened a portal to
yeah, it was
Sam
a Doom.
Neill was there.
This is the video game Doom actually occurred, and this was the origin. I don't think Brian has said what supposedly happened to them.
We'll get to that. So, and like numerous theories were put forward at the time. Some people did take this as proof that extended weightlessness was deadly. Other people said that the cosmonauts may have been exposed to toxic gas somehow. Or
Space Ebola? Did that one ever come up?
Space Ebola. Fucking Castro, the mob, Robert Kennedy, LBJ, any of these fools.
The usual suspects.
Robert Kennedy was dead at this point. Anyway,
What was Hillary doing at this time, may I ask?
Funny you should ask. I have a 2-hour YouTube video for you to watch. Jesus. Before any like answers came, there was the global response, and people all over the world were shocked. Like the space race is one of those things where it is, as we've termed it before on this show, a weird like dick measuring contest between the US and the USSR. But there are also aspects of it that sort of brought out the best in the populations of both countries.
We discussed briefly on the last episode when the Apollo 13 mission was, obviously in extreme danger. Even Russian scientists and Russian leaders came out and said that they would help in any way they could to save the Apollo 13 astronauts.
Even Richard Nixon, human trash bag, said, the whole world followed the exploits of these courageous explorers of the unknown and shares the anguish of their tragedy. But the achievements of cosmonauts Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev remain. It will, I'm sure, prove to have contributed greatly to the further achievements of the Soviet program for the exploration of space and thus to the widening of man's horizons. Not sure if that was Nixon because he threw no slurs in there, but anyway. The cosmonauts were even on the cover of the next issue of Time. And obviously the morning was keenest in the USSR. People were weeping openly in the streets, partially because they had just seen 3 weeks of television broadcasts from this crew, and it brought them closer to them. There was also a sense that...
So it's kind of like if there was a season of The Bachelor and then in the last episode they were all dead.
I thought of instead of Big Brother, it was Big Comrade, and it was just having to see them try to navigate life and love in space. And working together, and then they die on the final challenge.
It's funny. Most houses in the Soviet Union were like real world houses, in that the KGB was constantly monitoring them.
Cameras everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. There's always
producers that were
also
turning it into
very similar
news.
to also most Russian houses very similar to real world houses in that there was a lot of jacuzzi fucking going on.
They
very
do love their
popular in
jacuzzis.
Russia. Yeah, and they love to fuck in them.
I mean, what else is a jacuzzi for?
Yeah. It's got coos right in the title.
Again, I am not editing this one. It's got Jack U right in the name. Anyway,
I'm thinking. What does a Frenchman in a hot tub say? Jacuzzi.
That's
what I got.
Of the jokes that have ever been told on this podcast, that is one of the ones that is most up my alley. It's like extreme
not bad.
narrow casting for me.
It takes a little bit of random knowledge of cultures.
When it hits,
language.
It hits so good. It is very warm in here. So there's also a sense that, this was going to be sort of their national comeback in space, and sort of like a reassertion of like their genuine achievements, and sort of reclaiming their place. And there was a sense that was lost or marred, and it was sort of hard to get back even after that. The investigation results were shared with NASA before they were shared with the Russian public. So what happened was, after the 7-minute burn, the crew fired off a series of explosive charges, which were designed to release a valve to prepare for reentry. The charges were supposed to fire sequentially. There was a malfunction, and they fired all at the same time. And the force from that explosion ripped open another valve that was only supposed to be opened once they were in the atmosphere. So the module rapidly decompressed. This is a horrifying detail I found in one article. The cosmonauts would have had 15 seconds to close the tear before going blind and deaf from burst blood vessels. They died within 90 seconds of the breach. They were not wearing spacesuits during reentry, and this was something that the USSR did to save space in the Soyuz capsule, so they could send 3 astronauts up instead of 2. And this disaster changed that. One of their big retools after this was they designed a new spacesuit and only sent 2 people on the Soyuz missions until like 1980, when they just made the thing bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And the Soyuz and Salyut missions continued after the redesign, basically up until the launch of the International Space Station. Mir, the space station Mir was like Salyut 7, I want to say. So there was a state funeral for Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev, and they were buried in the Kremlin Wall necropolis. I could have just said like tomb or something, but I saw an article that said necropolis, and I'm like, I'm fucking using that. American astronaut Tom Stafford was one of their pallbearers. They were featured on a Soviet postage stamp, among other tributes. There's a at their landing site, they erected like a 3-sided metal column with their faces. I can't remember if it was sculpted or like etched onto each side. That column was found in 2012 to be vandalized beyond repair. And the current Russian space agency Roscosmos replaced it in 2013 with a brick one that's, I guess, sturdier because 3 little pigs rule. Mm-hmm. There are craters on the moon named after each of them, and their names were included on the fallen astronaut memorial plaque that was left on the moon by the crew of Apollo 15. And yeah, again, to this day, they remain the only humans known to have died in space. So 2 asterisks there, humans and known.
One for sure an asterisk. The other,
yeah. And that's the official story of Soyuz 11.
Did you guys, when you guys talked about 69, did you feel horny at all? No, I'm kidding. Did you?
That was the original rough draft for the Austin Powers script.
69
did you feel horny at all?
No. What did you think about the possibility that we faked it because we weren't close enough to pull it off? We weren't there yet.
I think that got involved in the alternate history.
Yeah.
But officially, like,
I think we mentioned it, but did not because
you can't
apply it as the official version of events.
Yeah. That was what happened. We also did talk about Buzz Aldrin punching someone who was a moon landing truther or whatever they call themselves.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's great. Yeah, he gets pissed.
We touch on it in that episode. Buzz Aldrin's a weird dude who will punch someone for denying the moon landing, but seemed also like much more smart and capable than a lot of people at NASA thought he was. I think maybe because he called himself Buzz. That's probably like a branding error.
He's like a nerd, but then he also partied, so he was a little wild card.
Yeah, like
he was the whole package.
Yeah, if Stephen Hawking called himself like Spider, like no one would have taken him seriously.
A nerd who parties, truly the Seth Cohen of the Apollo missions.
Jesus.
I think you could only have the one of such a funny nickname out of the crew. Like it couldn't have been Buzz Aldrin and Spanky Armstrong and like
literally
Soda Pop,
Tails
Rodriguez.
or Knuckles.
Yeah, all the Happy. We couldn't have had a Happy in the crew. It would have been too much. Russia would have left, and rightfully so. We would have had the crazier names for our astronauts.
Yeah.
There was also the thing where like Apollo 10, they named their like call signs for their command module and lunar lander were Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and NASA was like, "You're landing on the moon. You can't call them silly names." Basically. Anyway, Lund, whenever you're ready with the alternate.
Sure. So earlier I meant to say that just in case people are wondering, I am high as a cosmonaut's balls right now, and I didn't do a big deep dive on this, but I did connect a couple dots, and I feel like there's something worth exploring, which is this. And you didn't mention it, which makes me think that I'm onto something, because I think you may have your own agenda. But so there was an original crew for this mission that was replaced. The original crew were 3 different guys: Alexei Leonov, Pyotr Koladin, and Valery Kubasov, otherwise known as the Koob. And they were they called him Koob, and yeah, he was the man. All right, so the mission was scrapped, or they were scrapped from this mission because supposedly the Koob had, or it was likely that he had tuberculosis.
I thought the Koob was
classic Koob.
I honestly thought the Koob was going to play one of his classic pranks. Like he kept ordering pizza during cosmonaut training and being like, "What's the problem, bro?"
Yep, kept pouring sugar into the gas tank.
The Koob was a rare breed. Yeah, the Koob was a rare breed because he was everything. He was a prankster. He was a tough guy. He was the cut up. He had it all, right? So what I think is likely is that he got a little too big, and was ready to be a superstar and be bigger than Russia. He would have been internationally loved and would have been just made a citizen of the world, and outgrown Russia, and that wouldn't have been good for Russia, so they say that he had tuberculosis, but that I think is bullshit, because there's another version of events that says that 3 days before he was pulled from this mission, from this launch, the Koob was at a popular Russian bar called the Cosmopolitan Knot because of the drink. And he's
I'm glad you clarified, because of the drink and not the magazine.
I had to make sure that it's just audio, and something's lost when you can't see my face. But and also if you could see the logo of the bar, there's a Cosmo, in the glass with the lemon wedge. So it sells it more if you see it. But so he, it was confirmed that the Koob was there holding court, and they're not looking sick at all. He actually won a push-up contest between himself and Ivan Drago and Zangief from Street Fighter 2. And neither of those people are real, supposedly, but this is the story that I have been told.
Although this is not the first episode we've had where Ivan Drago or the Rocky series played a prominent part. God, I think it was Apollo.
I believe it.
Yeah, was it 13 or 11? Where I think it was 13. Yeah, where
13 with Derek.
Apollo 13 was changed to the 13th movie in the Apollo Creed series, and not a space mission.
Oh hell yeah, yeah! I could see us getting to 11 Creed movies. It's just generational.
Oh yeah, I honestly fuck with that.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, it's a strange coincidence.
No. Well, yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that the Koob was set to become bigger than even these Russian folk heroes that we know.
The Baba Yaga, etc.
Like the Rock. He would have been like the Rock. The Russian Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he would have been Dwayne Johnson, the Koob. And he got yanked and benched by Russia, and he plotted his revenge, which was he was waiting for the replacement crew when they came back through the atmosphere. He was in, I don't know where they landed, but I think it was the
Kazakhstan.
The
Kazakhstan,
Indian Ocean,
home of Borat.
They so he was ready for him. He was waiting, and so he finished the job basically. I don't know if the three men would have survived re-entry, but the coup made sure that they didn't. If they did, it wasn't for very long. And
he went from a prankster to like a serious to a murderer so quickly.
He really upped his game.
Well, I mean, he was wronged, man. He was unfairly held back by the country that he loved so much.
I think that's actually the plot of Joker.
It is.
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that these three men had to die, but the coup, he needed blood in order to feel like he was, that he was able to get revenge, and so that was the price that had to be paid. But I hope that eventually history can fondly remember the coup, because he was a shit. He could skateboard and surf, and he was good looking, but he wasn't a dick.
I mean, except for the murder part, which
well, I'm saying he was turned into a murderer by Mother Russia, by his family. It's not fair.
All of us
He's
get
just one man.
Everybody gets one triple murder on a mulligan. It's going to happen in your life. You just got to accept it.
I would say if you asked 100 people whether they forgave the coup, if they knew him well, they would have, because they would have known he wouldn't have been driven to that point if it weren't for extreme circumstances, and that included, because he was supposed to be on whatever flight or mission would have happened in like 75. So it was 4 years after what should have been, and he would have been a part of the. I don't know that they would have had to cut the mission short if the coup was up there and able to take a look at things.
I thought for a second you were going to say he was going to be on Carson, but
he was. He
would get called over to the couch after doing his 5.
He was supposed to do stand up on Carson. That's right. When Joan Rivers was hosting, then he would have killed it. So he would have been able to come back when Johnny was hosting, and he would have been invited to the couch. And who knows? He probably would have.
We wouldn't have had Jay Leno then. It would have been the Tonight Show with Coob.
Fucking Carlin who?
We wouldn't.
Carlin who? The Coob is the godfather of comedy.
He was smooth, man. He connected with people.
I'm thinking of just how easy it would be to do skateboard tricks on a space station. Because these nerds are running on a treadmill.
Yeah, just eternally.
Yeah. Just always
flipping.
The Coob came up with I think the Coob originally came up with Hickory Dickory Dock. I think that was a Coob.
Oh yeah, that's classic Coob.
Yeah.
Coob man.
He was tough because his name was Valerie in the time when any type of weakness, perceived or otherwise, was potentially disastrous. He turned into a positive, goes by the Coob,
it's a classic boy named Sue.
Yeah, no, I was going to say,
That's right.
Didn't he write a song about his life called A Boy Named Valerie? And then Shel Silverstein, that fucking plagiarist, comes along.
Damn. I did not read that, but like I said, I was pretty high when I tried to research this, but I got distracted a few times.
Could I ask you one last question about the Coob?
Sure, yeah.
Do you know what became of him after his triple murder?
So, I think what happened, what Russia, what the Soviet Union said was that he was captured and imprisoned in Siberia. But I think that is also suspect because no chains can hold the Coob. So I think that he was able to escape. And I don't know that he surfaced because I think he realized that he wasn't going to be able to last, survive if he were to try to prove that Russia was lying. So I hope whatever he's doing, he's happy. I can imagine him, giving tours of islands, in the tropics, or
yeah,
who
Coop's
knows?
Island
He
tours.
could be.
It's basically the end of Shawshank, really.
Yeah, he's in Zihuatanejo,
Yeah.
kicking it with Red. With Red, his friend Red Scare.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
I think what it is definitely a Shawshank Redemption type of happy ending, where he had to crawl through a river of shit, but he came out clean on the other side. The coup,
The difference
clean
being
as ever,
in this one,
shining like a dime.
the key difference between this and Shawshank Redemption being that he did indeed commit the murders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, he popped those blood vessels with his bare hands.
Nathan, thank you.
Sure. Hey, thank you.
I guess before
Let's
we move
let
on,
the people decide, but I spoke truth.
yeah.
All right.
We'll also put up a secondary poll. That's do you forgive the Coob?
Yeah, what's the coup up to? It's anybody's guess.
It's so close to the Cube, which sounds like a sci-fi novel's deity that they made up.
Yeah, that's just the Borg.
Yeah.
His origin story, transcends space and time.
I'm picturing him as like a weird half machine, half like Spuds McKenzie type. Anyway,
you got the space race, but then what about the time race?
Perfect.
That's a story or two.
Before we move on to judgment, listeners, if you have time, throw us a written review on your podcast app of choice. Just write 5 stars. Tell us how you feel about the Coob. Or if you are the Coob,
Rate 5 stars and then write 5 stars.
but
Double down,
genuinely,
10 stars.
adding text helps us get traction. So write 5 stars. Write your favorite story about the Coob. Do whatever you want.
Write how the Coob has affected your life.
Yeah.
You can also leave us a comment or ask us a question at revisionistpodcast.com or reach us on Twitter or Instagram. I think Facebook still. I deactivated my Facebook a while ago, but the page should still be there.
I think it still exists for sure. I saw a notification saying we got a fan recently.
Oh, cool.
I also got a notification for someone tagging us incorrectly because they were looking for a band called the Revisionists, but tagged our podcast instead.
Ted Leo and the Revisionists.
Any publicity is good. Anyway, like we said at the top, donate if you can, give blood if you can, and just
vote. Yeah,
vote, and especially if you're white, try to be an empathetic person and listen to what people are saying.
Yeah, shut up a little bit. That's a good call. Shut your mouth.
What's the matter, you?
You know what? The Coob may have committed that triple murder, but he was fucking woke about race, and he knew when to shut his fucking mouth. Be like the Coob.
He coined the term "less is more."
Yeah.
Cool. But judgment for this episode falls to you, Zach.
Yeah. Honestly, obviously, this is a very sad story that involves 3 horrific sounding deaths. But I just can't walk away from the idea of a a murderer, a free murderer who's a combination between Ferris Bueller and Andy Dufresne, living somewhere out in the world right now. I think I've got to go with the alternate on this one.
I got to go with the Coob. Listeners, voting is now open on our Patreon if you bought your right to vote there. And stay tuned to our Instagram story next week for the final poll. But Lon, thank you so much for joining us.
For sure. That was a great time. You guys are very funny.
Oh, you're very funny. I didn't mean to do the drunk socialite paw.
That's oh yeah. I charmed you.
Oh my God!
I got you a flutter.
It is 1,000,000 degrees in here right now. Sorry.
Oh yeah. You're gonna pass out, and we're gonna say it's the vapors, and you're gonna hit your head.
Ooh. Oh my! It's like I'm a fucking Tennessee Williams play. Zach, thank you as always.
Of course, thank you.
All right, for everyone here at the Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
Have a good time. Yeah, Coob, if you're out there, hit us up. May 30th, 1806. Andrew Jackson kills Charles Dickinson in a duel, a record for the fewest people killed by Andrew Jackson. One more. May 30th, 1868. The first Memorial Day is observed in the U.S. The original pitch, Veterans Day, but more of a bummer. Okay, that's all. That's all right. What I got.
May 30th, 1536. King Henry VIII marries Jane Seymour, a lady-in-waiting to his first two wives, and she really earns her high school superlative of least likely to be decapitated. May 30th, 1431. The 100 Years' War. In Rouen, France, the 19-year-old Joan of Arc is burned at the stake by the English-dominated tribunal. The Roman Catholic Church remembers this day as a celebration of Saint Joan of Arc, which entails the Pope tweeting a picture of Joan with the hashtag #GirlBoss.